If you knew me before, you wouldn't even look my way. If I had the nerve to speak, you wouldn't hear what I say. Time has come and gone so fast, we're not who we used to be.
And welcome back to Sullivan's Unheard Voices. I'm here again with Chris. I'm so glad that we get to talk together again. And here's how this conversation came out to be, right? Because I get tired of the narrative that I hear. And I was talking about poverty and the experience of poverty in this great country of ours. And the thing you keep hearing back from people is that if you are able-bodied and you're an American person, you have the same opportunity as anyone else and you could go out and survive. And I'm like, that's a narrow scope of like what poverty in America really is. Can you sort of give me a little bit about your experience and sort of why we're coming to this conversation today?
Sure. Well, first, I have some expertise in this that goes into these deeper depths that where we really look at like the social science around what poverty truly is. And so as I think of poverty, I think you have to think of poverty differently, not monetarily, but what creates the disparity in a population or a community. And that's what poverty is. Like one definition that I got of poverty was like the worst kind of poverty is war, because war leads to more desperate situations for everyone and leads to more destitute for everyone. So if poverty leads to that, then what are we trying to get at? Because if every able-bodied person supposedly has advantage, then the statistics would say that. We would have, so if we took a zip code, let's take the 97306 in Salem, I believe. It's South Salem. It's one of the more spendy per capita. Take one individual per capita, divide all of the money per capita by every individual that lives in that, and then now take 97303, which is this part of Salem and this part of Kaiser.
Yeah.
And honestly, I grew up like 2 blocks this way on Plymouth Road, which is, I got to eat my first cockroach and all kinds of stuff. And that's poverty to me, man.
Yeah.
But that where people had to go when they couldn't rent anywhere else kind of thing. So that opportunity to go from 0 to 60 for them in a way, like to start from where they're starting to where they need to go to be equal, is many, many, many more steps than someone growing up in 97306, where they're already at like this upper level. They don't have to walk very far.
And they have that support and the guidance and all that stuff along the way. And how much of a difference that makes when you're talking about the starting point. Because I think you're right. If we lived in a real, true meritocracy where everybody had equal opportunity, that's one thing. But we live in a nation where people are born into poverty, and it takes 3-4 times, like you're saying, just as much effort to get out of that cycle, because it takes resources. And when you don't have any resources, you can't build upon resources. It's just very... It seems very short-sighted, that argument that Well,
it is. It has the argument lacks empathy, and I always, as I have this conversation, it's always like, I am a Republican. I am like a very conservative Republican, but at the same time, I'm like a very thought-focused individual that thinks about the social issues, and the way I vote doesn't reflect what party I identify, like any identification, right?
Yeah.
And so what I see is folks looking at from their vantage point and then looking down and not seeing the many, 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 many steps it took for even them to be there. Even if they said, my parents were of immigrants, and they worked at whatever they did, but what are your children working as hard as your parents' parents?
Yeah.
And then what are we teaching your children from your parents' parents? You can negate this argument pretty quickly if you have a chance and also opportunity to speak.
And the reality is like, if you look at how much it costs to live today versus 20, 30 years ago, like, because like, I know people that are on food stamps, right? And I hate calling them food stamps because it's all the competition. But I know a lot of people that are on food scarcity, and the money they get
Mm-hmm.
for food scarcity is barely enough for
Mm-hmm.
1 week. Like, and it's like, when do we take a step back and start thinking, like, what do we need to do to help people at
Yeah.
the bottom so that they have just their basic needs met?
Yeah. Yeah. There's, and that lends into, well, okay. I mean, because I can go all
Yeah.
over all day with this, and so, you know, what you're talking about is this almost fallacy that we've grown into with equality. But like, Jimmy got two and I only got one. Why can't I have two, kind of thing? And all this. And really it goes back to like this. I go back to this term inequity. I always go back to Samuel L. Jackson saying the inequities of,
Yeah.
but it's that old though. You think like, Jewish Old Testament inequity. The word equity means something like getting exactly what you need based on what your wants and needs to accomplish your goals, just for your basic life. Do you have that or not? And that's what's missing with the equality equity conversation. If we're equity, then we would give even more education opportunity to those that have less,
Yeah.
because the equitable distribution is correct to those individuals that live more in poverty. That is an equitable distribution. And this is a fiscal Republican, whatever person saying this to you. I
Yeah.
am saying, but this is, as I believe, this philosophy going back like 3,000 years. Inequity, equity. I'm not making up a term. I'm not trying to redefine it. I'm just trying to say, if we were really looking at things for everyone to really have an equal shot, we have to get at equity. How can everyone even, you ever seen that picture where it has like the different kids and they're trying to look over the fence and with the different ladders and their
Yeah.
different heights? I think the real image should be where you tear down that fence.
Yeah.
Let everyone on the field. How can people even get on the field? There's no barrier. That's the true sense. Now, once that barrier is gone, then how do we get to equitable distribution of things? How can I surrender a little bit of my privilege, so to speak, so that someone else can have some equity in their life, so they can get at the opportunities that I scratched and clawed for?
100%. And I appreciate that perspective immensely, because like, uh, when I grew up uh, in a very interesting situation where if it weren't for the mortgage and a few other things, like, we would probably be okay. But my dad made some terrible financial decisions, and we lived in poverty for about 6 years because he couldn't let go and start over.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I'll never forget like having to live off of Top Ramen for a month. It's not good food. And so now that I'm in the position that I'm in, I'm going to do everything I can to support people that don't have what I have.
Yeah.
And that there is that sort of true American prospect as well that I respect. Like, if you are hard and successful and you've earned what you earn, but let's not leave people behind at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. Like, I think there's room for both.
Yeah. I even think like, the Medicaid cuts are happening at the federal level.
Yeah.
And I think about that, and I think about that's how you lead to like one step to poverty. So I was like, this comedian, he was talking about like, rich people and poor people they have the same problems but just different outcomes. And he was talking about like, you get a flat tire, you're a rich guy, you call somebody, they work, and yeah, I call USAA or whomever.
Yeah.
Because I'm not changing a flat tire on the freeway. But if you're like living paycheck to paycheck, going from your first to your second and have your third job later, you get a flat tire, that is disastrous. That can mean you're kicked out. That can mean Johnny's not getting any surgery. That can mean big, big consequences that if you're not understanding that whole person's story, like what led them there, maybe it was like you're saying, like it could have been a parent mistake, someone else's mistake. It could have been a folly. They could have took a big chance on a business and failed, but then still have to support their family. Now they're working 3 jobs. We don't know their story, but we judge from our story, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying, like that dude with the flat tire that day, someone stopping could change his life, or just say, well, he could just call, AAA. Maybe not. I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
those are the kinds of things like that we could take stock in and realize how a little tiny hiccup can be of significant consequence to another person versus us.
And I know like a lot of people today that struggle with their uh not their copay for car insurance, their deductible.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they got in an accident today and they can't afford that deductible, then their car can't get fixed.
Yeah.
And it's like that's a scary place to be.
Oh, yeah.
And there's I don't know, like they guess the idea that the conversation I sort of wanted to have is sort of like, where are we with poverty in America right now? Like, is it something that you see is increasing, or is this something like, because like I keep hearing two sides to the conversation, but I don't know what the reality is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The poverty is increasing at per capita. That I think you need to look at numbers, not necessarily number, apples to apples, but look at like how people feel, number one, and then what is like the opportunity for home ownership, for ownership. What is some of these other opportunities per capita, per population? Because that's, and then and you can look at ratios too. And so it makes it more complicated, but it also makes it more accurate, because I could take a person, let's say they're 26 in 1970, what would be the percentage of or ratio of their household income that would allow them to afford and own a house versus someone that's 26, same age, 2025. What's the ratio of their income and how much will it take for them to own a house? And just take that scenario.
Significantly more.
Right. And significant more challenges. I think of where, out in Silverton, I think of that population. If they're not living with their parents, they cannot afford to rent, let alone even try to buy. And if they want to buy, they must have an exceptional income, not just like, I'm a hard worker at, it used to be where you could work at like a warehouse or something and make pretty good money and decent money, raise your family or whatever. You can't, even if the warehouse pays really good money, you can't. You got to have a couple other people bringing in that much income, and maybe a loan from your parents, and your parents better have not messed up either.
Yeah.
If you're gonna, if they were in the recession, or if they lost money in the last stock market, if they lost something in the recent, they're not going to be able to help you. It won't be the same. Like, folks need to look at the current reality with accurate lens. And I think they also, when we look back at the past, I think we have such rose-colored glasses because maybe we were children, or maybe we didn't realize like all these really other weird economic levers and the absolute poverty they had then. They had poverty back then, but like, it was different.
Yeah.
Different poverty and different ratios. So yeah, that's what I would say is like, it's getting worse, but in a different way. And we're also a level of, what's that word that makes just people accept it? It's almost like the boiled frog, where folks are okay with just going along with the, like, well, okay, we'll just rent some more, or we'll just do some more. And then other folks are like, oh, I need to pull money out of my house, so I'm going to leave it, turn it into a rental. And they don't realize what they're adding to it. They may even feel politically or ethically different, but they don't realize that even their own action adds to the fact that if you create more rentals and fewer homes to buy, of course,
there's going to be fewer homeowners.
Yeah, and an increased cost. It becomes like some basic supply and demand. I don't try to apply that to everything, but some basic supply and demand factors.
Well, and that has to be a part of the equation. Like, to ignore the economics of it would be very short-sighted.
Yeah,
and it's also strange to me. Like, we live in a society where you have entities like BlackRock who can go out and just buy properties just for rentals.
Mm-hmm.
And I see like the housing prices that keep going up, the interest rates are what they are, the price of everything else. And it's like, along with all of these things that you were talking about, how the banks are requiring stricter rules and all of these things, it just seems like it's less likely that people of the younger generation have access to home ownership.
And it's true. And you know what I say, but like for BlackRock, and this is something I read a book a few years ago, and it was like The Simple Path to Wealth, but and it goes to this other point that I was going to make. It's this, there's a book called Capital in the 21st Century. It's written by a French economist, but it basically explains that work will never outpace wealth in gain. That you can be a doctor, you can do the best plastic surgeries in the world, but the kid with $100,000 invested in some stocks is going to make more money on percentage wise over the years than you could ever do just with work alone. So you really need to really look at ownership. So if BlackRock is ownership, should we start investing in BlackRock? I mean, these are other questions. If home ownership is just that, owning a piece of property, maybe we then choose to buy other places. What do we do? How can we like vote with our footsteps? Like I've seen, especially in Oregon, and this is all my life, it's been my turnoff for Oregon. I'm a born Oregonian, but it's where we kind of yell from our state to meet our needs, but we don't go and do something or go engage with other states, and especially east of here. We always look to the West Coast, but we don't realize how much, even like some of the folks in Montana, Idaho, and Utah are kind of like us, even on the west side of the state. Like they're they care about LGBTQ plus rights. They care about immigrants. They care about the environment. There's lots of folks that we have more similarities than differences.
100%. And this is not a political issue.
Correct.
Right? Poverty impacts both political parties, people of every age. It needs to be something that is embraced on both sides of the spectrum. And just like, because you're right, we have more similarities than differences. And I don't understand why we can't start the conversation there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think you are.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You are. I mean, literally, you are. Yeah. I mean, you're part of this.
Yeah.
Is part of this conversation. I mean, and I think this is an important conversation we need to keep having, and with as many people that will listen. Like, how do we start to bridge these differences? How do we start to talk about whatever is next for us all?
And how can we start humanizing people in poverty?
Yes.
Especially people that don't have homes.
Yes.
Because like I'm tired of like, because I'll be out and about, and you'll hear people talking about the homeless like they're a different, separate being than human. You know what I mean? And it's like so disparaging, and it bothers me so much when people talk about it, because like when you start to dehumanize people for whatever reason, you tend to just neglect and forget the problem. Like it's not your problem, but it's our problem as people. It should be collectively our problem.
Yeah, you know about logical fallacies like the ad hominem.
No, please.
These are like thinking errors. They're taught usually in philosophy, but we teach them in quantitative reasoning too. So it's basically how if like someone's having an argument and you say, well, I don't like your nose. That's an ad hominem. That's an attack to the person, right?
Yeah.
Or it's non sequitur, like it doesn't connect. Like you're talking about one thing, and I'm like, well, what about trees and birds? And and you're like, dude, what are we talking about here? But my favorite one is it's called it's a cognitive bias, but it's called no true Scotsman. And so it's when you're having a conversation and you say, well, you are no true Scotsman. Why would you even have an opinion that's valid? And I always think like, wow, like that's what like. And so I try to think like, we could really work on solving some of these problems if we put aside some of the othering, because that's what a true Scotsman is. Like, you're not a Scotsman, you're a other.
Yeah.
You're how would you know about having a home? You're homeless. How would you know about getting a job? You don't have one. But that's it's so untrue. Like because you could flip that around left and right, back and forth. And so as I go into that, because I got all these autisms and other things, and so I start like having these glitches when people do that, because it's like that doesn't compute. I don't
Right.
know what to do. Oh
Right.
my, oh. It's hard. It's hard to, I'm trying to hear what they're really trying to say is, I'm scared of that poverty. I am scared of that coming to my neighborhood. I am scared of some of the other aspects that could affect me and my family and my property and what I want to keep in my goals. Like they're not talking honestly about like the deep fear that this is causing. So it's easier just to say, that's not me,
Yeah.
but that's us. That's when I walk around Salem, especially see the people I grew up with, the people my kids grew up, man, you want to start crying. The kids that were your kids' friends in middle school and grade school, and I live in Silverton, Oregon, but I've also heard like some disparagement about Salem. I don't think Salem really wanted 7 prisons and a psychiatric hospital around it either, but
Or to close it.
yeah, we put it all here and here's the outcome. So it just more grace
Yeah.
to different types of people, maybe, so we could hear them, even if we disagree with what we hear. At least we can try to hear them, hear the words at least, and set aside some of the biases.
And that would be huge, I think, if we could start there, because one of the things I also see all the time is this pigeonhole of everybody that's homeless is blank. And it's like such a shake my head sometimes, because it's like, do you seriously believe that everybody living in the streets of Salem right now has a drug issue? That's not true. Some do, not all. Right? So like this whole fallacy of all or nothing thinking is something else that sort of gets in the way, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, I remember Sarah White. This is more in Silverton, but she was coming to the Kiwanis Club. She's the CEO of Sheltering Silverton. She was talking about trying to build a teen shelter out there, and how folks don't realize is that a lot of the kids, and she said from 16 to 18 or 15 to 18 or 20, I can't remember, but the little bit older kids they're technically adults, but they're still struggling, and they don't, and I guess they're finding different places to sleep under different places out there everywhere, and we're not seeing them. So the people that we're seeing maybe have some drug issues or some other stuff, but the people that we don't see,
yes,
that's the iceberg effect, and I think that's what people have to start looking at. And then those people are not getting services; they're hidden, and they're also being they're prone to victimization. That's what Sarah was explaining. That you're most likely, especially these young kids, they're more prone to victimization, and so if we don't have a place for them, we further harm them. And guess what? 10 years from now, we're going to be spending lots more money for all the the stuff we allowed to them to be, and we're going to be complaining about that too.
Yeah, that's a really very, very good point. Just right before I moved down here from Seattle, I worked in Tacoma, Washington, and we were trying to start a youth homeless shelter there for very, very, very many of the same reasons you were just talking about. And one of the things that was very surprising when I started to volunteer to help that project was just how many kids are couching it right now in other families' homes and other friends. And like that is their sense of stability, is just a couch at a stranger's house. And that is a huge population that we don't even talk about or recognize. And they are just as homeless as people living on the streets. They just happen to have a temporary place to stay. And I think they need the help the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what is happening is overwhelmed the system. And I've had the opportunity of, I used to supervise a practicum program here in Oregon. And so we worked with a lot of the nonprofits around here. It's to license them as practicums, units for our students. And so it seemed like we used to have enough capacity of these things to really keep folks off the street. And I worked in a team homeless shelter for Northwest Human Services. It's called Host here in Salem. Wonderful place, but they no longer have that kind of capacity. They used to have a place where you could transition from get like your GED, get emancipated, get a career, live in your own like apartment almost, and then they'd help you with rent. I don't know how that can help the level of people, the amount of individuals out here. There's not enough services, and so society is going to have to own this because these nonprofits are not.
And they're
They
trying
can't.
their best,
Oh yeah,
but it's just there's not enough funding.
yeah, and there can't be because we're running out of funding in our own homes too. And so if we don't look at this different, we can't say, well, I got my pot, you got to go get yours. Like if you got a little bit of extra, fiscal Republican, a little bit of extra, like make a meal, drop it off at a homeless shelter, go talk to a homeless person, a houseless person, go engage with, just do whatever it is. It doesn't matter, man. Just if you could give capacity, give capacity. If you could give compassion, at least give compassion, and let's not other the folks.
Yeah, and because like I remember when I first moved to Kaiser versus even now, and it's been like I think 3 years. In the last year, what I've noticed specifically is the food bank traffic.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be they would operate the food bank here in Kaiser, and you would have this like small little line. Now the line of cars just to get to the food bank for extra food goes almost all around the block twice, and it's full of various levels of quality cars and all these different kinds of people. And so you see like all of these people have one thing in common: they need food.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a testament to like where things are at right now. And I think it's sad. And my heart goes out to them.
Well, 20% of Marion County's population was like under the federal poverty level. That was back in 2006 or 7 when I did that research.
20%.
Mm-hmm. They always had, because of the unique demographic of this population, where you have a lot of the states, I don't want to say problems, but problems actually all sent to the same county. And so you also have this unique like state government where you have a lot of property that's off of tax rows and stuff like that. And then it's not a suburb of anything. The suburbs of it don't admit that they're suburbs of it.
Yeah.
and it just creates this unique thing that if you're not honest, you can't see it. And being here 51 years, I see it. And you can see, this is neglect that the state, the product of what we see is we are complicit through neglect. We have to be. Everything becomes that way. Either we engage or we don't engage, and the outcome is positive or negative. It's okay. But once you own your inaction, then you can understand what to do next.
Yeah. And it seems to me like they keep throwing money at systems that don't necessarily work.
Oh yeah.
Without taking a step back and saying, okay, what do we really need? Mm-hmm. I was talking to a friend of mine, Shawn, who owns the Mekong Bistro in Portland. And one of the things that he spoke to me that was very profound is that they're usually taking a statewide approach to poverty, and they're neglecting the localization need, because like what's needed here in Salem is going to be vastly different than what they need in Silverton. It's going to be vastly different than what they need in Roseburg. But yet the approach they take is like a statewide systems approach. And then they can't figure out why things aren't working. It's just, it's a micro community, but we're treating it like a macro community problem.
Yeah, it probably needs to be broken apart with fewer regulations, because I believe that a lot of the state economy and state regulatory system is dictated out of it's dictated out of Portland, not only just the most populated areas, because not necessarily the most populated, because there's high populations here in Eugene and then some other outskirts. But when you get to a focused concentration, it's more like south and east, or not south and west Portland, and closer to the Vancouver, but not necessarily East Gresham, and some of those areas. And so I see like this concentration of ideals and of culture, and I see also a concentration of perspective, but lacking perspective anywhere east, and especially further east, where I see some significant inroads of brown and black and other types of people impoverished. And I don't see that advocacy in the Portland area for those individuals, even though it seems like they would if they knew them.
100%.
And then there seems to be lots of Oregon associations that don't go to the rest of Oregon in Portland. And I feel like they might need to be Portland associations, because like your friend's saying, maybe the focus is it needs to be in these little localizations, because you're right, Salem needs a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Portland needs a whole different thing. And it probably needs to look at like part of the Vancouver market as the whole thing. But when you go over to Pendleton, they have a whole other issue and some other issues. And then Ontario and Klamath Falls, totally separate places, but also have different issues that are dealing with. And then some tribal governments are involved and have some policy stuff that are different. So like your friend's saying, that's where equity comes in, that concept of giving the right kind of thing and the right what to the right person, rather than equality, which is the problem that we keep seeing. Where let's like the best example, the gas tax. I think of a gas tax, and yes, we should pass it if I live here, because I can actually walk to somewhere. I don't live where it's mountainous and I need a truck to go 50 miles to the store. So the gas tax disproportionately affects me the further I am away from population. Is it equitable? Would an equitable gas tax be more of like something that could factor in what's happening socially and what's happening demographically around me?
I appreciate that, because like I spent about 3 or 4 years in Roseburg.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an interesting experience in that one thing that I learned was that as you have people with disabilities in particular, their incomes aren't going up. Mm-hmm. And so they're having to move farther away from the major metropolitan areas just to be able to afford to live. But then they sacrifice all of the services and medical care and all of the nonprofits that could help them, because they're living so far away from that community. But yet there's no conversation about how to equitably service those communities that have a huge disproportion of people who are living in poverty, because that's all they can afford to live. Like, given the option, I know a few friends that would rather live in Portland where they can get services for their disability, but they're on SSI. You can't afford a place in Portland on SSI. So it's like, what do? Do you live without services, or do you live without housing? And that's a real conversation that people have to have with each other, which I think says a lot. Yeah.
And even with the house, I think with some of that is like, a lot of the solution, it seems to be thrown at by policymakers and lawmakers that are like, let's build more rentals. We'll build affordable rentals. That's my affordable, dude. That just prolongs, because those rentals will go up in cost. You have more rentals than home ownership. If people own, they stay, they take care of. If they also have wealth to leverage. If you take that away, they have not. You give them a box to live in.
Yeah,
and that's all you've done. And you've given them a box to rent, and you expect them to clean it up and leave that box clean after. And you've given them no rent, no wealth, no way to achieve their true goals for their family, and nothing else. It's the wrong solution, I believe, but it's hard to do in these dense markets. Like,
yeah.
So I know some of the solution though is just first being honest, and then moving from there, and being, what solution, what's the real solution? Are you trying to feed them right now? Or are you trying to create an outcome where they can be autonomous? And in that, you need to give them a path to their ownership of their own, vine and fig tree. Isn't that come from Hamilton?
Yeah.
I want to sit under my own vine and fig tree, or like George Washington said in Hamilton. And I just remember that. It rings in my head. And I was like, I bet everyone wants that.
And I would love to see, like, instead of affordable housing,
Mm-hmm.
subsidized condominiums.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, give people pathways to ownership, because I think a lot of people don't understand the financial ramifications of renting. So, like, I'm renting for the first time in 25 years, right? I got a divorce. We sold the house. Do I buy a house? I'm not sure what I'm going to do, all that stuff, right? But I can tell you this, the minute that house was gone, I can't get a loan.
Yeah.
I work for the state. I make good money. I have all of these things. I have perfect credit. Do you think I can just go out and get a loan? No, I don't have a house or anything for collateral, right? And so, like, the financial ramifications of renting versus owning is huge, just in terms of survivability. Because if something happens, like, okay, you could pull another 10,000 out of equity in the house to get some short cash to fix whatever problem is there.
Right.
When you're renting, I'm sorry, go buy a house is what they tell you.
Yeah. Or if they're going to remodel it, they can kick you out.
Yeah.
I mean, that happened to me on deployment, but that's a long story long.
Yeah.
So it was like crazy, and I hear you, like, exactly what you're saying. Like, I'm almost in the same situation.
Yeah.
Work for the state, do all that stuff, and I'm renting.
Yeah. Isn't that something?
Yeah. And it blows my mind. But at the same time, like, that's the solution. What you said, subsidized condominium. Let's folks, like I've seen this in St. Louis, where they have like half ownership, half subsidized ownership, and then they do it.
Yeah.
And then it creates the community, because the community in the building is all about, I take care of my neighbors. I'm not trying to be away from my neighbor, but you have to do something. Or they're going to have to rent. It's going to be either subsidized ownership or rent controls. The government is going to have to decide something, because I don't know how the whole, everyone that owns all the property is cool, but I don't know how the rest of the folks are going to keep being able to survive in it.
100%.
So something's going to have to give.
Yeah. And talk about unintended consequences. So they did that bill where they said you can't raise rents over a certain dollar amount. So now what's happening is that the banks are putting into their loans, for the commercial loans, that if you don't raise your hand, or you don't raise your rent by that little amount, so let's say you don't want to raise rent on your tenants, they'll pull the commercial loan from you. It'll just come due. And so the renters, now the people who own the property, have to fold in a plan to increase rents on everybody, so that the banks don't pull funding from them.
All that does is further perpetuate the inflation on rent.
Yeah.
Rent will outpace the rest of the economy.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah. Unintended consequences of a law.
Dude.
Yeah.
That is greed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the issue. I think that's the regulatory. Sometimes we want to, I'm going to say, so when I watched Oregon go through their pandemic policymaking, I saw far more mistakes than what I saw in some of the states that I lived in, and where there's lots of political disagreement in these states. What I did not see is the difference of types of people when I'm in Oregon to where I was in Missouri or Illinois and Arizona near the Phoenix area. What I will say is that, like, they opened up quicker. They also didn't regulate stuff like that on purpose, because they knew that more regulation after this crisis is gone. The regulation is there.
Yeah.
The crisis is gone. What thing now? What do you do? And so now we have these situations where we pile regulation on top of regulation here in our state, and we have this wonderful outcome of the banks trying to basically anticipate the regulation.
Yeah.
To maximize their profit outcome. Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Totally directed towards the poor, it's just like, yeah. Uh-huh.
You know what? I hear you can squeeze some more blood out of that.
Yeah, right. But, like, when is enough?
Like, I've given everything.
Yeah. Like, I moved away from Washington State because of the tax system and the tax, like, all of that stuff that they have up there. Because, like, it was getting out of hand, like $350 a year for tabs and property taxes going up 20-30% all the time. And it's like, I know I'm exaggerating with the 20-30%, but it felt like that. And so it's like, at what point can you just, like, stop for a second and really take a step back? It's like, do we really have to increase taxes on the poor right now? Like, how can we do what we can to not do that? Because, like, they're getting it here, they're getting it there, they're getting it here. Like, the government shouldn't be another layer of, like, sucking money out of people who can barely afford it.
Yeah.
It's so strange.
Yeah. I think, even just taking a step back sometimes and looking at, does this regulation, what is the impact? And let's just do like a cost benefit analysis on the regulation. And if the benefit to the people that you want to serve, like the rental, whatever it was, if the benefit to the people that you want to serve, the poor, are not benefiting, they're actually being harmed more by it, should we keep it or not? And that's, it can become like a pretty easy business exercise if we could do that.
If we could do that.
Right. Anyway, yes.
Because the other aspect too of the system, because I know a lot of people on the streets that have significant mental health, and they have no place to go. And I don't know what the right answer is for that, but I know that there is a huge need for mental health care in this state, and we don't have enough providers.
Yeah. There's I got lots of answers for that, and also lots of problems and lots of stuff. I worked at 5 years as director of education at the Oregon State Hospital, and just got immersed into the transformation of what mental health, the transformation of mental health and mental care in the state behavioral health. Watching the old hospital go away and the new hospital being built, and seeing all the structures that really needed to take place. The building was just a building. It was really the structures. And that's why they're being sued. The hospital's being sued again, because those structures didn't change. The not in my backyard, the things that you're talking about right now. And that's something needs to change. Something needs to give. I think there's a couple different things. One, opening up Medicaid for more people, a Medicaid for all system, or even with the business. One of my ideas is there's some business certifications in the state, veteran-owned, minority-owned, emerging small business, and then they're working on the Oregon small business certification. It allows a business to get more access to certain types of contracts. Part of that could be access to the Medicaid market.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, immigrants that have less than a legal status. So it's not necessarily they're legal immigrants or have illegal status. It's just that if they don't meet the threshold for the Medicaid legal status, like I think it has to be naturalized citizen, and there's a couple other categories, they can't be approved for Medicaid because of the federal government. However, Oregon passed a law that has a special tax that actually provide. I think it's called. It's not Cover Oregon, because that's the failed ACA rollout, but it's like Cover Everybody. But basically, it's for immigrants for the state. Basically, Oregon said, "Well, okay, the feds are not going to cover you. We're going to cover you." So there's a mechanism out there to cover people that don't fall into the traditional Medicaid group, which are children and pregnant mothers.
Yeah.
And we have the longest Medicaid demonstration project. It goes back to 1994. It's called the Oregon Health Plan. It's actually this big, huge thing that a lot of people don't know how unique it is, but because mostly it's complicated. But it's a mechanism to actually cover more people. So imagine I could be certified as a small business owner. I could just own a restaurant or a bar, and then my family or my workers are covered.
See, that would be so beneficial. Like, I know so many people that would take a chance on starting a small business if they knew that part was a part of the equation.
Yeah.
Like, so many people. Because, like, I know off the top of my head 4 or 5 businesses that have closed now in the last year because they can no longer afford the healthcare and the other costs associated with employees.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've given up and they've taken jobs just so that they could have their own healthcare.
Right.
And I can only imagine how much of an impact some program like that would have, especially like you were saying, like give that portion to people who need that equity piece. But it's also increasing, because like I know every time you have a local business or a local company and they all of those dollars that they expend, all of the dollars they make, everything that they bring in, everything they give out stays local. Whereas contrast at the giant corporations, most of the money you spend there goes elsewhere, and then a portion comes back locally. And so anything we can do to help people begin businesses would be amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
I think that would be it's one of my, if I keep getting to work my job, it's my next phase in the next even though of the legislative cycle. We just passed this other bill, and I'm talking to you as a private citizen, by the way. I know I can get in trouble for that. So if I get fired, it's cool. All right. It's actually all good, because that's the way I work this job, because I care, because we get to make an impact in the economics in Oregon. And so right now we just passed this bill where it creates that small business program in the state, and it really basically kind of corrals and aims all of the things that help small business, but in one direction. That next phase, my dream, is to further and get Medicaid, the basic, and it's bare bones, y'all. It don't do much, but it'll get your teeth checked out. It will make sure you're okay and you don't got cancer. It even cover some cancer treatments, but you're getting covered. It has a basic cover. You're not going to get Botox or nothing awesome, or get a mole removed. Maybe sometimes you can get mole removed. But anyway, it's a great benefit. And just to have that, I mean, I could imagine it would change the game. I could see business owners caring about keeping their employees well. I could see, giving sick time. That would be easy conversation now, because I don't want everyone else to be sick, because that will increase the risk pool. I could see also insurance companies be like, yo, that would be a low risk pool, because so many people are covered. And then that covers also the concept of, we want people to work. So you literally have to have a small business program to, it kind of covers a lot of things. And so that's my dream. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm working.
And I'm also thinking of the flip side, right? Because it allows people to take jobs with small businesses that have families that might not otherwise be able to have access to that job. Yes. So it's sort of like one of those random win-win-win situations where it's like a no-brainer, and I hope it works.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the goal. So that's why I'm talking to you, and I'll talk to anyone about it, because the more people that talk about this, like, why don't we do this? Yeah. Because it really could be smart and a great way to look at this, because we can't just tax the folks that keep fighting taxes. Because guess what they're going to keep doing? Fighting tax, because they got the money to keep fighting, because they can be sitting in the Riviera and fight us from there. Yeah. We can't do that. We have to get up and go to places. So what can we do? And so we have to work with what we understand. And when we work with what we understand, we can factor it in and then move forward.
I think somebody thought I said Siri.
Better than Alexa.
I love it. They're listening to us. Uh-huh.
Well, yes.
But then in terms of like the other piece too that I wanted to sort of highlight, in terms of the poverty, words are hard sometimes. In terms of poverty itself, and a pathway out of poverty. Because like one of the things that I have found over the years, that the first step towards getting somebody out of poverty is by allowing them to believe in themselves enough to get out of poverty. And I think if we change the way we talk about poverty and look at it as a systems issue instead of a personal issue, more people can find their ways out of that sort of ravine, if you will, because you get so pigeonholed and so sort of focused on surviving that you can't picture yourself out of survival mode. And the first step towards breaking that cycle, I think, is not only giving people opportunity, but also allowing people the ability to hear that they're human and we care about them. Mm-hmm. I think that's huge.
Yeah, you speak to it. It's Maslow's hierarchy, man.
Yeah,
you're not going to be talking about this. I like to do this. This is an experiment. You want an experiment?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I love this. All right, this is just, you think of one of the scariest things that can happen. Like you have a kid and their life is literally being threatened in front of you. I know it's a terrible thought, but if you just imagine it, imagine this terrible threat in front of you, just this hellish thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's threatening you, your family, and it's almost too much. Now, do your taxes.
Right.
Do your taxes.
Yeah.
I need you to do your taxes right now. No, don't even think about your family being murdered. Do your taxes.
Yeah.
Do it. Think about that. Like the Maslow's, like I cannot even think about that until I'm safe. I can't even think about the next step until I'm fed, until I have water, until I know that my next moment won't threaten my children, my wife, my family, my partner, whomever.
Yeah.
Like you can't get there, man. So if you can imagine like the scariest thing you've ever did, and then you can do your taxes, you're unique.
Yeah. You're not lying. Yeah. Because like the first thing that goes is that prefrontal cortex.
Mm-hmm.
Like just out the window.
Yeah, you're down to. I always like when I taught fifth grade, and I showed this one really cool video one time. It's a series of videos where everyone got to learn, like at your core brain, you got a monkey, you got a lizard, and you got a fish. These are doing most of your thinking for you. Almost 90% of everything that we do are that monkey, that lizard, and that fish. Like that, it takes a second for your frontal cortex to actually engage. Like a second, I mean 40 seconds. Like literally to make a decision real quick and then make a decision after 40 seconds. And then you'll start to see, you could even document it. Just some behavioral psychology for fun.
That's interesting. That's fascinating. I'm letting that sink in for a minute.
Yeah.
Because we like to think that like we can make these rational decisions like right away, one after the other, but you're right. They have that decision fatigue, and it's like every one after that builds on them.
Well, it's in a rut in your synapse. Your synapse, when the connection of your neural connection, they're like 1, 2. And then, so once you make that connection, you hear a thought, it just lays into that rut and goes that rut. Now, if you challenge it, now you're breaking the connection. You have to grow a whole other, you're growing something, man. You're using matter and energy and whatever is inside your body. I don't know how to grow a synapse. I just know it happens. But you're growing something. So you're making a whole new other avenue in your brain. Now make an avenue in a city. like that takes work and material and stuff. So it takes time. And so, but once it's a concept of synthesis, and it goes like, so everyone synthesizes stuff, like brings in and does different things with different information. But if you practice over time, you get better at it. You take that time, but that time that you take with it, you get faster at it. It's not ever going to be instantaneous.
Yeah.
But you get better at it, and you also get better at humility when you make a mistake. But it just, I taught fifth graders that. I hope they work out.
I know, and I appreciate that so much, because I almost like think about that same sort of conversation on the flip side, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're stuck in that sort of poverty rut, if you will, it's going to take a lot of work and a lot more effort to retrain that brain to sort of fire off different synapses, because you're stuck in that muscle memory of I'm always going to be here.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Well, it's that the beat dog.
Yeah.
The beat dog, and and I've seen it. I don't want to call like human beings dogs, but where you see people institutionalized, like at the Oregon State Hospital, or if you work with like homeless and houseless teens or adults. Actually, I've worked at Hope and the teen shelter for Northwest Human Services here in Salem. So you see what happens, and like I remember one houseless individual, and this was like 2007, 2008, man. So this is a lot longer before this crisis. And the guy lived out in West Salem in Wallace Marine Park, and he called it his park. And he said, yeah, you better not run through there at night. He was living in a shelter, and we were trying to get him out of that, but that's where he was, in a very kind of, tribal kind of way. People lived there, all kinds of shenanigans were happening and whatever. And this was back in the day, let alone whatever's happening now. So Yeah. And we were all kind of allowing that to happen at that time. We didn't realize it was going to come to our front door.
Yeah.
And it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's increasing, it seems to be.
Yeah. It won't. It's like when I go to the Silverton town hall sometimes, and I tell them, it's like, you can't outrun poverty. You can't outrun poverty. Like like you can't keep drawing circles and hope it doesn't work, or hope it works. It's just not going to happen.
Especially because like there's not enough resources. There's not enough land. There's not enough.
Yeah, it's finite. And people, I know that teaching physics, like you have to displace things. That's how you float a ship. You have to displace matter. Otherwise, it doesn't float. So, what will we displace in this saturated market? What do we need to do then to look at that? I don't know. These are all good questions that I have answers for.
No, but it's really important to think about it.
Yeah.
Because you're absolutely right. Because like, if we don't do anything, if we keep heading in that same direction, how many more people are going to have to suffer before we finally start saying, maybe we should think about people suffering less?
That'd be the only way that we could deal with the suffering. Because if you think, read any book about like the utopian future of, Hunger Games, why do they eat to excess, and all that. They have to stop caring about the people that they suffer and create structures for suffering, like in society. I'm not saying we ever go there. I'm just saying that like we all know these stories. We know how they end. We've read human history, and the human history, the fiction comes from the fact. And no matter, we can go back as far as we want to, but we can see the same humans will do what you say. They'll justify the suffering by creating a system for it.
Because then it becomes somebody else's problem. Yeah. It's that system's problem.
It's their fault. It's their fault. Everyone has problems. My dead dog and your dead kid are the same. Everyone has problems, kind of, even though, hey, it's okay, guys. I don't want to kill any dogs.
Right. At the same time, though, it's the most curious part of it for me, when you take the human out of it, it takes away all empathy.
Yeah.
And I think this is a problem that needs to be led with empathy. And one thing that I've noticed in the last couple of years too, I mean, I've always known it, but I've noticed it way more than other times in history, I think, is that people tend to have this individualistic approach, and they tend to forget that there's nothing in a 24-hour day in your life. There is nothing you can do that doesn't involve something made for, touched for, cared for, loved for by someone else. If you're driving, that car was made by someone else. Mm-hmm. If you're driving on that road, was made by someone else. So we are in this society together.
But hold on, what if I make a sandwich?
Yeah.
Isn't it just me?
Right?
JK, because it isn't me. Because I didn't grow the wheat in the bread. I didn't put the bread on the shelves. I didn't do all, that, we do that in the work that I do, because it's about procurement, and we try to look at what took this thing to get to this place.
Yeah.
And what hands, all the steps, all the billions of steps. And when we really think about it, there's really no way you can be a human without other humans.
Yeah. There's no way. Yeah.
People have tried it, and they usually, we don't know who they are because they're dead somewhere and they're out in a mountain, and good for them.
Yeah.
But the rest of us, all 8 billion of us, we really need some other people.
Yeah.
So however, and what I learned from Hamilton, the world is wide enough for all of us. So sometimes we don't have to be on, if if you don't like somebody, it's okay to create some space. Like, it's all good.
And even if you don't like somebody, create some space and just let them be.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Let them be, because it's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool, because that's what we got to do. Because, what knowledge and knowledge is not virtue. What we understand is not virtue. And we will never change someone by beating them over the head with our perceived virtue.
100%. that only leads to them digging in their
Oh
heels
yeah.
and saying, no, you're beating me for my virtue must be right.
Right. And their ego. I mean, you ever shame someone to compliance for
No.
permanent compliance?
No.
No, I can't think of any time I got someone to do exactly what I wanted because I put them down so bad that they graveled and they didn't want revenge on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like all you create is the enemy tomorrow,
Yeah.
you know. So you have to, there has to be some kind of middle compromise and non-litigated outcome.
Although even with that USAA, you're not off the hook.
That's right.
So USAA is the only organization on the planet who only services loans for veterans. And then they sell those loans to veterans to predatory lenders. They do it all the time. And it's a practice that they will not stop. So I'll keep complaining about it.
All right, good. Keep complaining about them. All right. I'll complain about them this December when they give me $125 for being a owner member. Whatever.
Oh, I am a member, and I will use them for my home loan.
Right.
But I still want them to stop that practice.
I agree. They're a good company, and they may listen to us. I actually will participate in the next meeting, and I'll actually advocate the same thing. That's actually good information, honestly, because as a member, I want that difference too. And I think that's what we do. We need to participate and raise our voice when we can. And sometimes our voice won't be heard. It's okay. But I think that's the goal is keep raising our, I thank God every day for my voice. Like I say, my lips are unclean, but thank you for my voice, because it must be something that why I'm here, to be able to talk and to navigate some of these things and maybe to serve other people, because that's also my goal. Really create outcomes for all of us that live in this area, live in Salem, Kaiser, but all of Oregon, man. We've all been doing this for a while, and I think we need to look at each other, our homeless houselessness, our Portland, our Pendleton, our South, our Coast folks, our Middle Oregon folks. We kind of all want this. We all want to live in this place. We all want to thrive. We want our children to thrive. We want to enjoy the outdoors. We want to enjoy this beautiful place we call Oregon. So, I mean, that's the alignment. So let's figure out the rest.
I couldn't agree more. We've been at this for an hour. So, Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
It was a pleasure.
Pleasure. Anytime. Appreciate you.